Good morning, Title I Committee of Practitioners. Thank you for joining our meeting today. This is our first meeting of the new school year, so it's very nice to see you all here again. We will go ahead and start with the roll call, and then we'll have some introductions. I'm Tara Rodriguez. I am the Director of the Division of School and Program Improvement here at the Kentucky Department of Education. So let's start with the roll call. Jan Ainger.
I am here.
Mary Beth Bowling. Ashley Burnett.
I am here.
Christina Dalton.
Oh, here.
Ricky Hanger.
Here.
All right, Stephanie Harris. Diane Hatfield. Holly Kimball. David Malonti. Stacy Talley. Robert Tanner. I see Robert's here. He may be having some trouble with his microphone. And Daryl Vincent.
I am here.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, since we have a new committee member this month, and that is Miss Ashley Burnett. And so let's just take a minute or two to go around, and we will introduce the members. You may notice there are a few people on here that are extra to the council. Some of these are presenters this morning, and then we also have a few people on for support of the meeting. So I'll just go down the list here of the people who are here, and if you want to just tell us your name and your role on the committee, and maybe where you're from. And so we'll start with Jan Ainger.
All right. Good morning. I'm Jan Ainger. So I serve as a parent rep on the committee, but I also, this is kind of my background. I teach in the College of Ed at University of Kentucky. So I'm on faculty there. And I currently live in Georgetown, which is my kids go to school in Scott County.
Thank you. Awesome. Ashley Burnett.
Hi, I'm Ashley Burnett. I am a teacher in Warren County Public Schools. This is my 14th year in the classroom. I teach high school English. I was recommended to the committee by Eddie Campbell, the state KEA president. I've served on the KEA board of directors in the past and have been pretty involved in that organization throughout my career.
Thank you, Ashley, and welcome to the committee.
Thanks.
Christina Dalton.
Happy Friday, everyone. I am a lead district social worker in Davis County Public Schools, and I provide mental health services K through 12, and I am in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Thank you, Christina. Ricky Hanger.
Hello, I am our district's elementary instructional coordinator for Meade County Schools, and I oversee our federal programs for our district. So I work in Meade, but I live across the river in Indiana, actually.
Awesome, thank you. And now, Mr. Tanner. We'll move on. Maybe he's working to get his some audio fixed. And Mr. Vincent.
Yes, I'm Daryl Vincent. I'm the principal of the Bullitt County Area Technology Center, and this is actually my 30th year in education, but I was a former physics and engineering teacher prior to my role here.
Thank you. All right, well, it's very nice to hear from all of you. And our next item is to go over our agenda, and we'll just review those topics real quick. So we will, our first presentation is going to be a Kentucky United We Learn Council update, and that will be provided by Susan Strange, who is the Strategic Plan Program Manager in the Office of the Commissioner. We will also have a Title I Part A update from Erin Sedith. She's the Education Administration Program Manager in the Division of School and Program Improvement. And then we will have a Title I Part C program update from Christina Benassi, who is the Migrant State Director. and also in the same division of school and program improvement. We will then talk about our future agenda topics, any ideas that you or requests that you have, and then a reminder about our upcoming meeting dates, and then we will adjourn. So we'll get started with our first agenda item, which is the Kentucky United We Learn Council update with Susan Strange.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the Kentucky United We Learn Council. And go ahead and go to the next slide.
All right.
Thank you. So the council has been going since November of 22. The makeup for year 2, which actually just ended at the end of September. So we are in year 3 of the CGSA grant, which is the competitive grant for state assessment, and it funds the council. Excuse me. The council makeup for year 2 is approximately 45 members. We meet collectively at least twice a year, mainly in the fall and in the spring. But this past summer, we did add an extra meeting because the council members felt like they needed to come back together again. Penny Christian is our council chair, and she's also the National PTA Committee chair. Jim Flynn is our council vice chair, and he's the executive director of Kentucky Association of School Superintendents. And then Karen Dodd is the council lead, and she's the chief performance officer here at KDE. This is just a screenshot of our journey to the moon. It's our roadmap to get us to where we need to be. We started with developing prototypes this past summer. We've given some legislative awareness, and now we are in the study phase, which, as you can see, there's a circle around it that represents that we bring things to KDE, to the council, to the field, then back to KDE. So it's a reciprocal cycle, if you will. The council is now, we just had our convening in October, and we're getting ready to start putting together the framework for the new assessment and accountability system. And if you'll see here, our moonshot for the council is to build a prosperous Kentucky. We will launch an accountability system that is meaningful and useful to all our learners. Okay, you can go ahead. So just to give you a quick update on the October convening, data was shared from our prototype 4.0 survey. So we've gone through a few iterations of prototypes talking about the new assessment and accountability system, and we are in prototype 4.0. We did a big share out on the survey to try to get responses from different stakeholders from across Kentucky. Data was shared around local accountability. We had Shelby County, Greenup County, and Fleming County there to share their local accountability dashboards and structures. Data was shared around assessment, state accountability, federal accountability, and reporting. Sarah Snipes, also with the Kentucky Department of Education, shared out the 36 district focus group data. The 36 district focus groups were made up of 18 L3 districts and 18 non-L3 districts. This ensured that a diverse representation of the state's geography and student demographics was there for the feedback sessions. On day 2 of the convening, which was Tuesday, October 22nd, it was evident that we needed to pivot our approach. We broke out into groups to discuss what was currently in the system and what we were proposing as changes and what that may look like to help the council members kind of wrap their heads around this current prototype. Following the meeting, KDE and its partners are preparing a framework based on data from the surveys and feedback from the council that's going to be shared with the council members in November. Pushing forward, after we share the draft framework with the council members, we will move on to sharing it with the Kentucky Board of Education at their December meeting, and then we will continue the study phase while also advocating for these changes. Our Engaging with Communities work group from the Cool Council will also be working on a plan to share the framework more broadly with different stakeholder groups to get more input before finalizing. Okay, if you want to go on to the next one. And then again, this is just kind of that same thing. Expert partners are going to work on the deliverables. We're hoping to have a virtual meeting in November, and then our spring convening dates are to be determined based on what happens at the November virtual meeting. All right, are there any questions for me? Okay. Well, if you have any questions or if you need more information, you can check out the United We Learn webpage on the Kentucky Department of Education main website, and it will give you all the information you need. Or feel free to reach out to me or Karen Dodd at KDE for any further explanations.
Thank you so much, Susan.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great day.
You too. All right, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the Title I Part A update provided by Erin Sedeth.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Up first, I just want to tell you about our statewide federal programs training that KDE hosted last month. We had that over 3 days. We had the same content over 3 days to try to make sure that everybody could have a chance to come and get the information. This training was provided by the Brewman Group, and they are formerly Brewstein and Manasevit. They're a legal firm that is nationally recognized for federal grants management, and education, regulatory, and legislative practice. We've had them in a couple times, and it's always a lot of really good information. We did have staff from over 100 districts in attendance, so that was great. And they shared a lot of really useful updates, some timely information, such as some recent updates to both uniform grant guidance and the Education Department General Administrative Regulations. They talked about procurement, the ARP ESSER closeout, and then just some tips to really help districts prepare for audits. So all of that was great information. Right. Right, next is Title I Part A resources and training. So we have a lot of resources that are designed to help our districts and our Title I schools. We have a whole web page just for documents and resources. One of the big things on there is the Title I Part A handbook, and actually it's a little bit updated from what's on this slide. This says updated version coming soon. It's actually out now. I think we sent that out last week, so it is available. And the October Title I webinar, we do a monthly webinar on the last Thursday of each month. I'm going to be looking at an overview of the major revisions to that handbook for our districts who are able to join us. So for those of you who are coordinators, be sure to join next Thursday, October 31st at 10 a.m. Eastern. Or, of course, we do always record those and post them on the webpage. We've also got all of our monthly newsletters and webinars on there, and we keep those up for a year. Some of our other resources are checklists, training videos, just general information documents. Some of the really useful ones that we kind of link when we issue monitoring reports and things. We've got information about allowable costs, carryover of funds, that's a big one. Completing the consolidated application. There's some videos walking our coordinators through completing that in the system. Comparability reports, different parent and family engagement requirements, and program documentation and safeguarding assets. We've also got some sample documents and templates on there. Some of those are pretty new, and the sample documents were updated kind of in conjunction with the handbook. So those are all new. And I am in the process of reviewing and revising all of our resources for accuracy, clarity, and incorporation of those new uniform grant guidance and EDGAR updates that I mentioned a minute ago. And a summary of the updates is often included in newsletters or webinars and or email correspondence. We always like to make sure everybody's aware when we make those updates. So Title I consultants are available to answer questions, meet with their districts to review program requirements. We always offer that for new consultant or coordinators. Would you like to have a one-on-one meeting? But that's available for anybody, even an experienced coordinator. It's always good to have a refresher. And districts are always welcome to submit feedback on the newsletter, the webinar topics, our resources, anything like that, or just things that maybe we don't have that they would like us to consider developing. So for Title I Part A, you can send those to your assigned consultant. Of course, you can send them directly to me. And we also have an anonymous feedback survey. It's always linked in our newsletters and at the end of all our monthly webinar PowerPoints. So that is available as well. Okay, next, yes, I have some kind of discussion questions. So first, Were you or anybody else from your district able to attend the statewide federal programs training? If anyone wants to share about that, either unmute or put it in the chat. All right, and then my other question is, are there any topics that you would like to see KDE include in a future training or a newsletter, develop a resource, anything like that? There are a couple of things in the works already, but.
I just want to remind everybody that, we really do want your feedback. That's really the whole purpose of this committee, is to provide KDE with feedback on our implementation. So I know not everybody may work with Title I, but if you have any questions, please feel free to, ask a question if you're not sure about something.
I have a question. Does Title I, would this fit under Title I, like something on restorative practices? Did that go under there at all? I know like there's some mental health that's in there.
I mean, the interesting thing about Title I is that it's pretty broad in all of the things that it can support. It really comes down to like what the district and the school have, and like their needs assessment and their CDIPs and CSIPs, and the Every Student Succeeds Act focuses on well-rounded education. So we definitely have some schools and some districts who are using Title I funds to support those types of activities. We'll go ahead on, and if you think of a question, you can always just ask, even if we've moved on. Right, so our next update is on our statewide consolidated monitoring. So this just provides districts with an opportunity to review their state and their federal programs, looking for effective implementation and collaboration. This year we have, I believe, 8 participating programs. So our alternative education program, preschool, and then our various title programs, titles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So each program looks at evidence that has been submitted by the districts and or the schools. We also actually go on site and conduct interviews, checking for compliance. We're also looking for best practices, and then maybe some opportunities for improvement where we can provide some recommendations to really help you strengthen existing practices and turn them into best practices. We always select 10 districts for these on-site visits, and we do that using a risk assessment tool. And those districts were notified on October 1st. The visits are always conducted between January and May. And approximately 8 weeks after the visit, the district will receive a report from each participating program. Some of those, it's just a district report. Some of them, there's also school level reports as well. The reports have strengths, recommendations, and then when applicable, there might be some actions required to address some compliance issues. We don't post those individual program reports to the KDE webpage or anything like that. That's just for the district and the schools. And then approximately 12 weeks after the visit, the district receives what we call the consolidated report, and that identifies best practices as well as opportunities for improvement that have been identified across multiple programs. And there's not any required actions or anything that you have to submit in relation to that report. But we do always wish that the districts would, review the recommendations very carefully and really consider implementing some of those that we suggest. We also have several of our programs, such as Title I Part A. We do separate desk monitoring. For us, it's a much more abbreviated look at monitoring compared to consolidated. And those districts actually just received notification about their selection yesterday. Go to the next slide. So all districts are required to reserve a portion of Title I Part A funds to support students experiencing homelessness. There is no required percentage or formula for determining that set aside amount. There's several different methods that districts could consider using. And during our previous monitoring visits, as well as just, general email, phone call, technical assistance, districts have asked how other districts determine the set aside amount. How do they use those funds? So our monitoring process already includes interviews with the district homeless liaison and the Title I coordinator, just in relation to the program requirements. But we're going to introduce a new technical assistance component for the 24-25 season. So this is just going to be a discussion with the homeless liaison and the Title I coordinator about how the district determines the amount of funds to reserve and how those funds are used to support homeless students. We'll be reviewing some recent homeless set-aside amounts, homeless student counts, and we'll be discussing some data points with districts that they use when they're determining that amount to set aside, determining the student needs. And we'll also discuss how the district might use information such as chronic absenteeism rates, for example, across the district compared to the chronic absenteeism for just the homeless population, and maybe where homeless funds could help support a need like that. Now, I really want to emphasize this is not a discussion related to program compliance. We're not going to be issuing findings based on that conversation. If there's a recommendation that we can come up with based on that conversation, great. But we really just want to find out what the districts are doing and identify how we can better support them with this discussion.
And Erin, I know you've discussed how this, I just want to clarify one more thing too, that this, you said it was for the monitoring. So this conversation will happen during monitoring, during the site visit, when we're already talking with the homeless liaison. That conversation will happen at that time. So it's just during monitoring.
Yeah. All right. Monitoring feedback questions. Does anybody have any questions about the consolidated monitoring process, or even desk monitoring, or that new discussion component regarding homeless funds?
I have a question. Sorry, I'm on my phone because I'm driving to work. My calendar didn't change it to Central Time.
Oh, no.
But on the consolidated monitoring, does that also include the migrant program in that?
Not in consolidated. They have their own separate monitoring. And luckily, Christina is on here today, so I'm sure she could answer any other questions about that.
Well, I was just making sure. Our district is one of the consolidated monitoring ones, and I didn't know. I hadn't found out yet if that we were part of that. So I just needed to know if we were part of it. That's not a problem.
Nope. All right. And then, does anybody want to share how their district monitors program compliance in between these monitoring visits or desk monitorings from KDE? One thing that we recommend pretty regularly is that districts and schools look at our Title I per day monitoring checklists. We have those posted on our website. They stay up all the time. We've got the district level consolidated checklist, and we have a separate checklist for schools operating what's called school-wide programs, schools operating targeted assistance programs, and we have a checklist for desk monitoring. So districts and schools can take those and kind of just use them as sort of a self-assessment. They've got all the different indicators on there that we're going to be looking for when we monitor. They've also got the legal citations telling you exactly why we're looking at this, and then some suggested documentation that might be good to save to demonstrate compliance, and in a couple instances, some required documentation when there's a specific item that needs to be saved. So is anybody doing anything like that in terms of checking for your program compliance?
And I'll just jump in with just an example. You know, it's probably most if you're with a district program, probably your schools have already had their annual Title I meeting. So, I mean, sure that you reach out to your schools and request the documentation and so on that they have for that to show compliance. But that counts as monitoring too. It doesn't have to be a formal going through the checklist, but just making sure that you know everybody in the schools and in the district is meeting the requirements.
Yeah. All right.
We like the emails that you send monthly. That
Mhm.
kind of gives you the coordinators at a glance to be able to have an idea of what that ongoing work is. So we make sure that I'm communicating that with principals each month,
Good.
and that just focuses in on our work. And we have a collection tool that we have a share sheet. So if there's anything specific that we need correspondence back and forth between our principals and central office to ensure that we're doing those things, like right now, report card conferences are going on with our families and things like that. We have a share sheet that we utilize monthly to make sure that we're staying on top of some of those things. So I appreciate the emails. We really like those once a
Good.
month communication.
I was waiting for you to share because I remembered when we monitored you all, you had some really good resources and things. So, all right. We'll go on to the next item.
Our next slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. The paraeducator assessment. So I last spoke with this group, I believe in April, and that was about the educational requirements for instructional paraeducators who work in programs supported with Title I Part A funds, as well as the Kentucky Paraeducator Assessment. So for the paraeducators working, either any instructional paraeducator working in a school-wide program, or someone working at a school operating a targeted assistance program who is paid with Title I funds, there are additional educational requirements from ESSA. So they can be met one of three ways. You can obtain an associate's degree or higher. You can complete at least 2 years of study at an institution of higher education. So that's usually 48 credit hours, depending on what that school considers a full course load. Or you can pass an assessment from the state. Kentucky has the Kentucky Paraeducator Assessment to meet the requirement through that third method. And I'm excited to say that we've contracted with Pearson Assessments to help us develop an updated paraeducator assessment to replace the KPA. And this is going to be over the course of this school year. We did, over the past few months, we've been gathering feedback on the KPA. We used some surveys. We also had some discussions actually with this committee of practitioners. So when Tara mentioned earlier that we're really looking for your feedback, this is a prime example of that. So just a couple of kind of highlights of some of the feedback that we got. The need for updating the terminology and just better aligning the questions to Kentucky standards. Sorry about that. Different content questions depending on the grade level, if the person's going to be working, say, with elementary versus middle or high school. Trying to incorporate questions about behavior, classroom management, cultural responsiveness, and making sure that we had some study guides and some practice assessments aligned with the final assessment. And we are going to be field testing this prior to fully adopting it. Okay, and we've got a couple feedback questions here. So is there any additional information or feedback that you would like KDE to consider as we begin working on this revised assessment? And then and there'll be more stuff coming out kind of surrounding this second one later, but would you be interested in assisting with future field tests of the revised assessment? We're definitely going to be reaching out and seeing if there's any educators, any current paraeducators who would maybe like to help us kind of field test before we adopt. And that's also something like if you want to reach out to me later and just let me know, you can do that as well. All right. Great, let's look at I believe, our last topic. All right. I shared some information about this in April as well. So this is our documentation storage platform. Um, Districts and schools are starting to use this program called Title I Next. This is from Public Consulting Group, and this is a documentation storage platform. So they're starting to use that for the 24-25 school year. Now, this is not required. This is just something that we are offering for districts and Title I schools who wanted to opt in, and KDE is paying for this for them. PCG has provided some training sessions for our districts and schools after each opt-in period. I believe we've had 4 opt-in periods at this point. They are also available for informational sessions with districts prior to opting in. So, before our next period, which we don't have set dates for, if you'd just like some more information, we can get that set up for you. And we are going to be looking for district and school feedback on this storage system, especially from our districts who are participating in monitoring this year. A number of our districts are using the program. So we want to make sure that it is helpful and it's kind of working the way we want it to, and helping districts and schools really organize their documentation in an easy way.
And I'm going to jump in and just provide a little context, because we got some newer members and one very new member. This documentation storage, when Title I is a program that has a lot of requirements, and districts and schools have to keep documentation that they're meeting the requirements. And there is so much that, we had just various districts and schools using their own. Some like to use paper, some like to use Google, some like to use other things. And so we provided this as one way to hopefully help the monitoring process, because it doesn't have to be submitted if you're selected for monitoring. It doesn't have to be uploaded. Is that correct, Erin?
Yeah, and we aligned this. We worked with PCG and aligned the folder structure to our monitoring checklist, so it just matches up perfectly. You can put the documentation in there, and then for the districts who've been selected, the KDE staff assigned to monitor that district are going to receive temporary access. We don't just have KDE access to all of these documents year round or anything. They'll get some temporary access to go in there and look at what they need to look at for monitoring purposes. And so that's just one less step that those districts and schools are going to have to worry about for monitoring.
And that's one of the things we're going to want feedback on, is if they were selected for monitoring and they did use this, did it help? We'll be very curious to hear more about that. So.
All right. So has anybody on the call, has your district opted in to Title I Next? And if so, do you have any initial impressions of the system that you'd like to share?
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is there, I'm sorry. Is there a cost? Is it free? Is it a free program for schools?
Right now, KDE is paying for it. And then, I believe we did a 2-year initial contract, and then we'll look at, what the feedback is on it. And then we also, in some of the trainings, PCG has been able to provide what the cost would be if KDE can't continue paying for it, what it would be for the districts and the schools. And it's not terribly expensive. And this would be something that a district could use a small bit of their Title I allocation to pay for, because it is directly related to the program requirements.
Was there another question? Sorry.
Does anybody have any recommendations for KDE moving forward with the implementation of the system?
It sounded like somebody may have started to speak with either a question or a comment. I just want to make sure that we hear everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If there are no further questions or comments, we will move on to the next presenter. Thank you so much, Erin. All right, and next we have a Title I Part C migrant program update, and that will be presented by Christina Benassi.
Well, thank you guys for letting me come and kind of share some information with you guys and hopefully get some feedback from how our program is doing. So the migrant education program, we deal with students that are agricultural workers typically. They work in some sort of agriculture, either them or their families. So we're working with those farm worker children. Excuse me. The mission of the Office of Migrant Education, we provide excellent leadership, technical assistance, financial support to improve the educational opportunities, academic success of migrant children, youth, agricultural workers, fishers, and their families. So the purpose of our program is to help remove those barriers for those students that are moving around for that type of agricultural work. With this type of program, we have lots of training. We have to help them locate the families. We have to do lots of eligibility requirements. There's lots of requirements for parent input and parent-family engagement. So we go through a variety of training opportunities to be able to help them. Tara, next. So with some of our training, we have an annual fall academy we have every year in the fall. During this training, we'll have a paperwork training. We'll go through all the different paperwork we have. We have a web application we go through. We discuss that. We have an annual administrators training that we go through, and we help administrators that are new figure out what their role and their expectations are, help them with finances, eligibility requirements, kind of go through the whole gamut of the migrant education program. This Fall Academy usually lasts about 2.5 to 3 days. We usually have some sort of professional development and also a variety of stakeholders and staff members from around the state that doing topics concerning preschool, finance, advocate, recruiters, reading, math, just a variety of different things so we can help our students in this supplemental program. We also offer quarterly training. So our next quarterly training is November 12th. Our location is to be determined based upon where our staff members are coming from. We have them from all over the states. We try to find a central location based upon where our staff come from. Prior to attending that quarterly training by KDE, they will have access to a Google Classroom where they can go through and listen to all the PowerPoint presentations, go through all the previous presentations at our Fall Academy, and just kind of get them some general understandings. When they come to that training, they're ready and prepared to ask some of the questions. We also have a web application because with all federal programs, you have to keep documentation. So we keep documentation in this web app. And each month we have some sort of training on it for each of the different components. Just go a little bit more in depth, and they have opportunity to ask questions, opportunity to go through and clarify anything they need help with. And during that time, again, we have our transition ready checklist we just did yesterday. It went very well. And then in November, we're going to have one on the preschool. So all the requirements for preschool we'll go over and understand. So next. So this is some of the feedback that we were going to ask you guys is, what is your experience with the migrant education program? Do any of you guys have migrant education programs in your district?
Yes, we do in Meade.
In Meade? Oh, good, good.
I'm fairly certain we do in Warren County as well. I'm just not familiar with what exactly they do. But we have a very migrant population.
Yes, Warren has a very big program. Yes, they have a.
We also have that in Davis County as well.
Thank you. Christina, I think you may be having some audio difficulty. There you go.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you cut out there just for a minute. Miss Dalton from Davis said that they have a program there. I think that was the last thing I heard.
Gotcha. So then what feedback do you have with your respect to the training at KDE that we provide our district staff on the implementation requirements of the migrant program? And then again, are there any topics in which your staff need additional training beyond what is already provided? Some of you guys mentioned that you know there's programs there. Do you feel that we need to provide additional training to district staff so they're aware of the program, or anything that you all can offer as far as our training and feedback?
The regional person we're partnered with does a really good job. I oversee that for our district as well.
Yeah.
And we have a great relationship. She checks in multiple times throughout the school year. And so we've got a good communication system going on to make sure that as the schools, we're communicating
Good.
with
Good.
our regional person, and they're also meeting with our families. And then we do the progress reports and check-ins. So we have a really good relationship between our regional person, our schools, and our families as well. So I feel it's going really well in Meade County. We have a very small group
Yes.
that we have here, but it is going well.
No, I'm very glad to hear. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. Anyone else?
I know something we usually do, our migrant program works really closely with our FRISC group.
Yes. Yes.
So, every year we're trying to provide that training of, what can migrant take care of when it comes to resources. So that I know that's something that we do yearly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm very glad to hear that because we try to collaborate with other programs and kind of work with them. So anything we can do with other people and be able to collaborate is very good. Thank you. Anyone else?
Christina, this is, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
This is Stacy, and one of the suggestions that I would have, for those of you that don't know, I'm the coordinator for the Warren County's migrant program. But with the SDP, like, I know it's a guide, but the implementation of the SDP is sometimes inconsistent across the state. Like what people are expected or how they're expected to implement it. And I know that it's going to be different for each program based on whether they're a regional program, a standalone, or those kind of things. But I do think that when training comes up for the new SDP, if we could include that in that training, that might be helpful.
No, I think that's a great idea. Speaking of which, I did notice, like I said, as you get through and you go through your SDP and service delivery plan, which I will help with everyone else. We'll explain that here in just a second. But as we go through that, there is lots of things when we develop it, we're like, oh, let's do this or let's do that. So we are looking at trying to make it more consistent and very specific as we go through this new one and make sure that we don't have a lot of gray areas, that it's very transparent, black and white, and we're very clear with our expectations. So I do appreciate that. We are going to work on those type of trainings. So thank you. So moving on, kind of lead way into what Stacy was saying with the service delivery plan, we have a continuous improvement cycle.
Christine, can I ask one?
Yeah, no, go on.
Just for our newer members, can we just talk about a little bit about we don't need to go into details, but like who is eligible for the migrant program? So we are talking about.
Oh, okay.
They oftentimes work in agriculture. They have a migratory lifestyle, just those kinds of things, facts, just for some context to the program.
Yeah, so the general thing, again, we use acronyms because it makes it easier. So we have a STEAM of eligibility. So they have to, S would be school completion. So they haven't completed school. So once they graduate or get their GED, they're no longer in the program. So they're eligible for ages 0 through 22. Again, it depends on if your school district will take transcripts from other countries and those type of things. But typically, if they've graduated in the United States, they don't qualify. Other countries, most of the time, especially Mexico, will take. Ages, again, is 0 through 22. They have to make a move, which is across school district lines. And they have to make this move engaging in qualifying work, which is typically agriculture or fishing. Some of the agricultural work could be temporary or seasonal, as far as chicken processing plants, like in Warren County. Daviess County has some too. Or it could be something like milking cows could be temporary work they could be doing. We have a lot of hay in Kentucky and a lot of tobacco. So anything that has to do with those seasonal type of jobs or anything like that, as long as they're making a move within the last 36 months, they could possibly qualify. So those are the main things. So a lot of our people, they may be documented, they may be undocumented, they may be American citizens, they may be people moving around in Kentucky. So we have a variety of people, a variety of different races and ethnicities, a variety of different languages spoken. The majority are English and Spanish, but again, where we have Warren and Davies on the line, we have a lot of different languages now, a lot of different dialects. We have French, we have Burmese, we have a lot of different ones from there. So there is nothing as far as race or anything like that that has to do anything. We are looking for like an economic necessity that they're moving because they have to engage in this type of qualifying work.
Okay, thank you. So just in summary, there's certain eligibility criteria. They have to be engaged in qualifying work, which is typically agricultural or fishing. They have to meet the age requirements and so on. But we know they have a migratory lifestyle, which can be very disruptive to education. So this program attempts to make sure that these students get the same opportunities and to exceed in education as other students. Did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am. That's excellent.
Okay. All right.
And like I said, the biggest thing with the training aspect too is we want to train our migrant staff, but again, where you guys are part of this committee, we want to make sure that other people besides just migrant know about this great program, because we want to be able to help these students get referrals and anything like that. So if there's training beyond that you think that would be necessary for us to help get it out to the schools or get it out to other people, we are open to those suggestions as well.
Awesome.
So this is our continuous improvement. I think we've talked about this several times before. You probably know this by heart by now, but we have kind of gone through our needs assessment. We just had a meeting in September, which we'll talk about. We're working on looking at the needs of our migrant families, kind of seeing what we need to do, and we're working on our service delivery plan. So we're kind of right there in that middle stages, needs assessment, service delivery plan. We'll start working into that. Then you start looking at your state performance targets and look and see what are our targets for the state and how can we make those migrant specific and kind of work on our measurable program outcomes as far as our program. And then we have to evaluate it. Each year we do some sort of an evaluation to see where we are with meeting those goals. This past year we did our evaluation in 22-23. We are on the last year of our current service delivery plan. So 24-25, this school year is the last year of our current service delivery plan. We'll reevaluate and make sure that we've met those MPOs or see what we need to do for our new one that starts in 25-26. The one that we just did our evaluation, 22-23, we met 2 of our goals. 2 of them we did not meet, and 1 of them we had not yet met. So we will kind of go over those and talk to you briefly about them. The first one here, of course, our MPOs, we're looking at reading. So most of you guys know that you want to make sure that your students are proficient in the KSA, the Kentucky Standard Assessment. So with migrant, we want to do the same thing. We want to make sure that our students are proficient as well, but we have to set a little bit lower goal just to see if we can obtain it. So we set 50% of our priority for service students, which is PFS. Those are our students that are the most needy students, the ones that are failing, at risk of failing. They'll have low KSA scores, may have low district assessments, they may have Ds and Fs, they may be EL. So those low achieving students that were really struggling, we want to make sure that we're providing 2 or more supplemental services for them. And then if they're getting those services, that they're going to have a proficiency rank, at least 1 in the KSA reading. The issue with some of that is we got 24%, so we did not meet our goals. Same thing for reading and math. The big thing is as you know, working on your CDIP and CSIP, the big thing is that there's such a gap between the different goals from proficient to distinguished, from apprentice to novice, that it's hard for them to jump between those big marks. We did look in between an assessment to see, did they move from lower achieving apprentice to higher achieving apprentice, and the results are still pretty much the same. We're just not on the goal as much as we should be, 24%. So with our services that we're looking at, the supplemental, we try to make sure that our students are in any type of program that we can help, because we are a supplemental program. So we count if they're in EL, if they're in 21st century, if they're getting anything in the school that's above and beyond what a regular school teacher would teach, we add those to our 2 or more supplemental services. Anytime our students are getting D's and F's, we try to step in and provide additional tutoring and try to help them bring up their grades. So those are some of the things that we're currently doing. So do you have any feedback on how KDE can support your district in attaining these kind of MPOs, measurable program performance outcomes for these migrant students in reading and math? Or what do you think we could work on to make these type of improvements? And again, on this slide, it kind of talks to you a little bit about our reading and math proficiency. Again, it's showing your KSA scores and what's going on and looking at those data trends. And you can kind of see how our migrant students are always a little bit below all of the other students. So that's what we're kind of looking at. And just asking you guys, have you seen similar data trends in your district for your migrant students or your lower achieving students? And what strategies does your district use to increase those math or reading for those students in those gap groups?
I think something you got to work really hard on is eliminating barriers for those families. That's the number one thing that I have seen. A lot of times they're moving. There is a gap in their education as far as going from maybe one school to the next. So there's already a gap when they're coming in a lot of times. And/or I've also seen where some of our students are with their kindergarten readiness skills are behind when they've entered. So I think any early intervention that we can do. And I know we've worked a lot with our families on how important attendance is because you can't learn if you're not at school. So we've been very specific with trying to target attendance with this particular group of students and trying to eliminate any of those barriers or things that is preventing them to get to school. That's one of the number one things we've tried to focus on that I've seen, particularly with some of our migrant families.
Yeah. Well, currently in our SDP right now, we're looking at attendance, and we try to educate them with attendance, and we try to help them write their letters, get those things, and, you know, explain the attendance. Do you have any other suggestions of things we should do to help encourage attendance for our students?
Well, I know some things that we did early on, because usually it's a family, so there's usually more than one kid a lot of times that I've seen. And one particular case we had, two of the older students, they were elementary wise, came in struggling to begin with behind their peers. So knowing that there was a 3-year-old in the home and trying to get that early intervention to get them in front of our preschool program, they did qualify for preschool, but trying to get that early intervention on and educating how important being at school was for these students. I mean, that's the number one thing that we tried to, that early intervention, what we have found has been key in trying to educate. And then it's hard to break old habits if you have a child that has that chronic attendance issues and they have been behind, like how to fix those things. So just putting some little things in place at the school level with students, holding them accountable, getting them excited to be in school, those kind of things.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I can't speak for the whole district, but I know at the high school level in Warren County, especially in the English department, because we have such transient students between the 4 high schools. One thing that we've really been working on the past couple of years, and I've served on a couple of committees, is making sure that we've adopted common curriculum throughout the entire district. We all use the same textbooks. We, you know, hopefully they're all following, but it's the hope that, you know, if a student goes from one school to the next, that they shouldn't be that behind, that they should be pretty much on par with whatever they're coming in, because that really sets them up for failure when they come in and, you know, we're on unit 3, but in their other school, they were still on unit 1 and they've missed so much instruction in the language arts area. And at high school, you know, we cover so much, and so much of the KSA is determined as well as ACT by those English classes in high school. So that's one thing I know Warren County has done.
No, and that's excellent. I love that idea. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, Kentucky is local control, so it's kind of hard to mandate anything like that, but anything we can have common, we do have those common standards. So we look at those standards and make sure that they know what they need to meet as far as those main goals. But I do appreciate that, and I totally agree. Anybody else?
Sometimes this applies to maybe older students, but I've found too, just kind of as an observation, uh, if some of those students and families can be involved in career and technical education programs where
Yes,
they
yes.
really value that education, we can pull in some reading and math support, and have brought in some supports like some of our even translators at the board and those things. And we've had some students that spoke only Spanish in the home, and were able to supplement that, but their interest in that program got them to school so they could benefit from all the programs.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. My husband used to work at CTE, so we try to bring that up a lot, and I try to do the college career. And if they can't do college, at least do a career and do something like that. We've had a lot of success with that. So no, that's great to get them engaged in something. We also kind of push the extracurricular. If they can get involved in something, maybe they'll want to do school and stay in school more. So anything we can do, we try. So we appreciate your all's comments. And then the next part, Tara, and this kind of goes with what she's kind of mentioned with early intervention. So this will be good. Keep going. Okay. So this one has to do with our other MPOs that we were doing. One of them we did actually meet our graduation goal. Kentucky does an excellent job as a state, I think, meeting their graduation requirements, and Migrant did as well. We had 70% of our high school students on track to graduate as indicated by our transition ready checklist. We have a checklist we look at. We check their transcripts. We make sure that they're on track to graduate. We had 73% of our students in high school enrolled. They were on track to graduate. So I thought that was a great accomplishment that we're able to help them with graduation requirements. The next one, by spring 2025, this is one that we're not yet on target. At least 90% of our high school students on target for supplemental academic services who receive 2 or more supplemental services will be on track to graduate. So we're trying to look about 74% of them that are receiving these services are on track. So we're going to work on that one. And then preschool is one that we kind of talked about. By spring of 2025, 65% of our preschool age students, children that are enrolled in preschool receiving 10 or more in-home services will demonstrate kindergarten readiness on our K-screen or Brigance. So right now we are looking at about 51%, so we're not yet on target for those. We're still working on that, and we're trying to figure out what to do, which is kind of what she mentioned earlier, is looking at that early intervention. What can we do to help those students? Right now, we're looking at monthly services to try to help those that are not already enrolled in a preschool, but we're still struggling. So on the next slide, on the next slide, we're looking at some of our documentation. So out of our students that are enrolled in preschool that are receiving the 10 or more services, some of them are about 50% they're ready. You know, if they're in preschool or they're receiving the things. If they're not enrolled in preschool and they're not receiving any instruction, they're about 50% ready, and about all of our students are about 51%. To me, that's still very low, so we need to look at how we can do early interventions and kind of help them. Again, that's one of our main focuses for this new SDP is what ideas do we have to help with that early intervention? And again, if you guys have suggestions, I know with Title I Part A, you all have to work on successful transitions from preschool into kindergarten and work on those. If we can collaborate with you guys any way to help with making sure that our students, our preschool students are going into kindergarten and they're kindergarten ready, I would be happy to help with any of that. Just, excuse me, reach out to me and we'll try to get the parents involved so we can bridge that gap a little better. And then the last section is about our out-of-school youth. This section, our out-of-school youth are typically those students anywhere between like 16 and 21. They may be on a visa. We have what's called H-2A visas. They're typically here to work for a specific amount of time, and then they go back to their country of origin. Those students, typically, they may want to learn some English. They may want to just do their job, send their money back, and not do much of anything. So it just kind of depends. They're a very difficult group to kind of reach. So our first goal, again, by 2025, 75% of our OSYs who receive English instruction have demonstrated improved language proficiency on our pre and post tests. So we had 71 of those students, and they've got 99% growth. So we are doing a great job for those people that want to actually learn English. They are learning their English. They're doing a great job. So again, it's just those students that want to learn the English. The next one, this is one that we're trying to establish a baseline, is by the end of 24-25, the percentage of migrant students who dropped out of school in grades 9 through 12 receive an MEP supplemental or academic and return to school in high school equivalency within 1 year will increase by 8 percentage points over the 22-23 baseline. So right now we're looking at specific students that want to go back to school. Right now we had four of our 492 students that received supplemental or academic services return back to school. So again, as you know, once the students drop out or if they don't have that opportunity, it's very hard to get them back into school. So that's what we're looking at our baseline. 0 did within 1 year of dropping out. So again, that kind of set our baseline a little lower. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat, so I apologize. But that's kind of what we're looking at as far as our MPOs with our out-of-school youth and kind of looking at what our service delivery plan is working on and kind of where we are with everything. Our next part, we're kind of talking about our comprehensive needs assessment. September 26th, we recently had our meeting. We met at KDE. We met with a variety of stakeholders across the state, and we discussed what we saw as our needs for our migrant students. So looking at the needs, we're looking at what are our concerns for our migrant families? What are we noticing or what are we getting? We had tons of surveys from parents and family members, surveys from students, and just different things that we needed to consider. So as a team, we sat down and discussed what are some of the needs of our families, what are some solutions that we can come up with. So with those solutions and stuff, we're always looking at what the Office of Migrant Education and the federal government tells us, and they always come up with these 7 areas of concern. So for most migrant students, these are the areas that most of them are concerned on is education continuity. They're moving around from school district to school district, so they're struggling, which again, like she mentioned, that common assessment would be very helpful, or the common curriculum. Instructional time, school engagement. Again, we talked about that, getting engaged in school, make sure that they have attendance, English language development, educational support in the home, health, and access to services. Those are those big things that we kind of look at and kind of determine what are our needs. And then it's always hard because transportation is always a need, but some of the needs, depending on what your school district is, depending on different things, we cannot deal with every single need. So we have to determine what are the needs that we can help as a migrant supplemental program that are attainable that we can kind of work on. So when we go on to the next slide, we're going to kind of talk about just some questions for you guys. What do you see in your district as far as migrant students, and are you noticing any of these types of concerns? You have any thoughts on how we can work with school districts to kind of help diminish some of these concerns and kind of help the migrant families?
I know one thing we try, some of our schools do in Davis County that works pretty well sometimes. They'll do something called homework diners. And it's like you're trying to get that parent engagement in school, and you're offering like help, homework, support. So we'll have some interpreters there. We'll use our language line, but we're feeding them. So we're wanting them, to get that school involvement, especially at elementary, and then trying to help them. Okay, here's how you can help your child with math, because it's some of that math is hard enough for everybody. So it's and then you have some language barriers there on top of it. But I think probably the biggest part of that one is just getting them, into that school participation and being part of the school family.
Yes. No, I agree. I think that's a great idea. Anytime we can get the families involved, and like I said, we have a lot of English language development, and I know with EL or Title III, they're supposed to be working with the families and getting that parent-family engagement. Same thing with Title I. So any way we can kind of collaborate and work together to get the migrant students feel more comfortable in the school, I think that would greatly help as well.
I just wanted to follow up and ask Ms. Dalton a question. How long have you been doing your homework diner? And it sounds like it's been successful. Do you have a lot of families that participate?
Yeah, they'll partner too. Of course, we always try to partner with the Frisk. And I think they've been doing those for several years.
Okay.
And sometimes they'll have more participation than others at sometimes. But I think when you feed them, a lot of times that will help, to get them in the building. Something else they do is like we have migrant camps over the summer. And those are wildly successful. Like we usually have really good participation on getting families and students involved in those over the summer too.
Wonderful.
And in Warren County, we have transportation, which is a huge obstacle in every county
Right.
for our families. But we actually go to their homes and help them after school. A lot of times the parents are there. Sometimes the parents are asleep because of their work schedules at the processing plant. And then we also do, like tomorrow, we have a parent meeting where we're focusing on preschool, and we are teaching them 6 different things to work with their children at home on, and we're providing them the materials to then take home so they can continue that with their children.
Thank you.
Which is where I was this morning, was picking up stuff for that.
And I guess the last question I have is like, how do you think Katie is doing with providing support to your district with these migrant concerns or these needs? Do you think Katie is doing a good job helping you guys navigate these needs, or is there more that we should be doing?
And you might already have something like this that I'm just not familiar with. I feel like almost, especially with Frisk, like a little cheat sheet, almost
Hmm.
like what can migrant funds pay for, what they
Okay.
cannot. That because we kind of run into that with like the homeless funds and
Hmm.
migrant, where it's like we're always still like, can they do that? Even though we've done it for so many years, I feel like we're always training and they still are not sure sometimes.
No, I appreciate that. I feel about the same way. It's difficult when there's supplemental programs because it's a lot of it depends. It's where's that kind of thing. But I can certainly look at creating some sort of checklist or something that may be somewhat of a guidance. I know the big thing is we do have our funding matrix and we do put that on there. And the funding matrix, if you look on that, migrant is on there, and migrant it will say if it's allowable or not. But again, some of the things on there will say contact your regional coordinator or contact KDE if there's questions. So that may help with some, but I will see if I can create some sort of general checklist. I know for the most part, food is one of the big, we get kind of wonky with food, but that's with all federal programs. We have what's called a parent advisory council where we can provide food, but some of the other things, a lot of it will have to do with civil rights and that EL. That's where we kind of run into those issues. It just depends on how the items are being used. So the item itself may be allowable, but it may be depending on how it's being used. So it kind of is, it gets a little gray when you do like actual checklists and stuff, but that's something I could certainly work with Tara on. Yeah. But thank you.
And I think we've seen in monitoring sometimes the collaboration, like we've been saying, is awesome when you collaborate with the Frisk. But I can totally see how sometimes you have to be a little careful there because migrant is a supplementary program, and you have to watch that. So I appreciate that suggestion, and we can definitely take a look at that.
Mm-hmm. I do want to point out, Aaron posted in the chat box that Title I Part A has general allowability checklist that has some guiding questions for determining allowability for federal programs. So you can always look in there and that'll kind of help with that. The big thing with migrant to remember is we're supplemental. So if another program can pay for it, they should pay for it first. Or if a child is migrant, but they're also Title I should pay for it first. So always kind of remember with migrant is we're supplemental. We should be like the last resort. As long as, if they're homeless should pay for it first, EL, everything else, and then use the migrant funds. Some of the issues become like with health issues and things like that. That's when you just got to contact Tara or myself and we'll kind of decide, what can we do? Sometimes we'll pitch in, like if the child has like a tooth issue, obviously they're going to have issues with focusing on schools, so we'll try to look at those type of things on an individual basis. But yeah, no, I appreciate your comment, and we'll definitely look at it. And again, feel free to contact me, and thank you guys so much for your feedback. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Christina. All right, our very last agenda topic is just to see if you all have any requests for future agenda topics that we might include. Our two upcoming meeting dates are January the 22nd and April the 22nd. Okay, and so the time will be the same, 9 a.m. Eastern time to 10:30 approximately Eastern time for both of those. So if you all have any questions, like if there's a particular topic or if something's come up in your district or that you've heard about that you would feel would be relevant for this committee to learn more about, this is the time to put in those requests, and I will do everything I can to get those on our future agenda.
Tara, this is a side question. Do you know last year KDE paid for a representative from the districts to attend the ESEA conference? Do you know, will that be an option this year or not?
That is not going to be an option this year. But we strongly encourage districts to use some of their funds to send people to the conference. It should be another really good one. And I think Erin's been putting some information in the newsletters about that. Erin, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
There's an announcement actually in the November newsletter,
Okay.
And I think I'm
It'll be
planning on
coming up.
mentioning it at next week's webinar as well.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. All right. Any other questions or suggestions for future agenda topics? All right. If you think of something, please feel free to just send me an email, and I will be reaching out to all the committee members with the upcoming meeting dates to make sure you get those on your calendars. If you have any suggestions for something you're interested in that you think would be important or relevant for this committee to consider, we would be happy to take those requests. Otherwise, if there's nothing else, does anybody else have anything else they wanted to share or ask at this time before we adjourn? Well, I want to thank all of you for the excellent participation today. We so value hearing from you all, hearing how you do things. We all have, with all the different roles in this group, people are looking at these programs from different perspectives. Maybe your child participates in a Title I school, or, maybe you work with a program. Maybe you have students in your classroom. Whatever your role may be, we really value your input and your feedback. So please keep that coming, and we will really look forward to engagement with the committee coming up soon. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great day.